So, when I was wondering about what other story to sort of do to you today, I was sort of, casting my net around thinking, well, what can I do here? Maybe do I want to do something a bit more about what's going on in America? Because I said it not too long ago. What is going on in America right now? And the Republicans' complete fracturing and their inability to be able to choose a speaker. As of now, they are up to 11 times. 11 times Kevin McCarthy has gone forward to try and get elected, and he has not been elected. Why? Because there is this hardcore, hard right faction that is there and he's saying, we do not want this guy because he does not represent our agenda. And this is their crazy agenda is crazy. Like I say, we covered that in the video. They want all kinds of crazy stuff that the sort of higher ups in the Republican Party know that the November elections, which were very much based on the agenda they would love to push, did not really work. They were seen as the complete crazies within their party. And as a result, it did not happen. But the crazies, unfortunately, have been fostered by the Republican Party and are now in a position where they can exert power. And what we are seeing in America is that exact pressure of power they want to start exerting. Because they were all fine and dandy when they were cheering on the agenda, but every so often they would say something and then it would be ignored. And it's the exact same in our own Conservative Party here. We've had this Euroscepticism build up. David Cameron tried to wrongly solve it, to be honest, with a referendum. Of course, that failed. And of course, we are now in the situation we are now. And it has gotten even worse. The party has fractured completely. And one of the big things, of course, is we talked about the return of Boris Johnson. And originally I was going to do the article that this comment that we're going to be talking about was commenting on. But essentially what it really is pretty much confirming that after the May local elections, Boris Johnson is planning a comeback. Yes, our one true Lord and Savior Boris is on his return journey. The article above does complete that that thing that we have been sort of worried about for quite some time. But like I say, we'll get, I'm sure this year we will be covering Boris Johnson's miraculous, probably return to power. But of course, to do that, he's got to get rid of Rishi Sunak. And I think if he does that, we're going to go into a general election. And even then, it is not guaranteed that Boris, leading the Conservative parties, is going to get a victory. Not at all. Because Boris was already sliding very, very much so in the polls. And of course, we've got those investigations into him. Those two could very, very easily seek him being gotten. And of course, we've also now heard rumors that Johnson now wants to switch seats because his Uxbridge seat that he is currently the MP for might not be a safe seat anymore. So there's rumors that now he wants to move to a different seat. So that could be interesting, whether he wants to sort of go and pursue that. But one thing I hadn't considered was, what does the rest of the party consider? What do the actual members of the Conservative Party, the non-parliamentary members of the Conservative Party, think about all this? And we're going to read this comment. Now, true, this comment isn't representative of the entire non-parliamentary Conservative Party. That's very true. But I think going through certainly the rest of this comments, this one comment, I think, really does sum up a lot more of the feeling from non-parliamentary Conservative members than anything else. And of course, you've got to know that the Conservative Party, especially the membership, is not a monolith. This does not represent, of course, the views of the majority. But when I have seen articles in Conservative Home about the return of Boris Johnson, predominantly, most of the people in the comments are not in favour. So before we go into this comment, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a notification link to my page, Buy Me a Coffee, where you can buy me a coffee. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well, where you can help support the channel. And of course, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, ring the bell as well, so you get notifications of when we drop a new video or when we go live. So, as always, let's crack on with this then, shall we? So, like I say, this is a comment beneath a Conservative Home article about the return of Boris Johnson. But what does it have to say about all this? So, we begin. So, as someone who voted for Boris Johnson in the leadership election, I, like many others, realise he is one of the few politicians who has the ability to reach voters who other politicians cannot. Of course, this is the Johnson magic that very, very much certainly has not worked. And certainly other by-elections that we've seen under Boris Johnson, people had had enough. And I think even if he does return, people have had enough of Boris. His whole shtick will not work twice. It was very, very much proven so in the London elections, where the London electorate had had enough of Boris. They were fed up of him. And he was on his way out. He would have not got that third term. But there you go. Yeah, he has repeatedly proven able to breach that political divide. Proven that how? Of course, everyone refers to his big London electoral win. And of course, you've got the 2019 win where he won the Red Wall. But there was more stuff going on at play than just Boris Johnson in that election. And I think that's what a lot of people really fail to really look at. But there you go. So, and this is where it gets fun. On the other hand, he was an immense disappointment as PM. After winning an 80-seat majority, he threw it away without any kind of plan to commence the vast reforms that this country needs. From our ridiculous tax code to the NHS, civil service, and not mentioning the stance on net zero. So what did I tell you? During the downfall of Boris towards the end, you had people saying, Boris is not a true conservative. Boris isn't a conservative. That was very, very telling, that he was on his way out and that they knew he was on his way out. You know, Boris wasn't a conservative. And of course, he didn't have a plan. Of course, he didn't have a plan. That was obvious. Boris never had a plan. Even in 2019, at that general election, it was all just sloganeering, get Brexit done. He didn't talk about policy or what he really wanted to do. There was no plan, because that is not Boris Johnson. So it continues. The only thing he did as PM that I support was his stance on Ukraine and the unflinching support for Ukraine and Zelensky. Well, not according to Ben Wallace, who, from what we heard, Boris Johnson did not want to support Ukraine. He had no interest in this. And when Wallace heard Boris was not going to back Ukraine, he walked into his office and said, if you do not support Ukraine, I will resign. And then Boris reluctantly started supporting Ukraine, but loved it because he got a ton of attention. He got to look like the hard man. He got to fulfill his Churchillian dreams. So while he did obviously end up supporting, Ukraine and Zelensky, which was good, it was not done because he wanted to. He was done because Ben Wallace said, you must support Ukraine, because from what we can tell, Johnson had no interest in supporting Ukraine, especially in the early stages. So it continues. Would I want him as PM or party leader again? No. And most of the time when I said at the beginning, when we see these articles talking about Boris Johnson's return, that is the prevailing attitude I see in most of these comments. Now, don't get me wrong, there are still those who want, Johnson back. But there is starting to be a prevailing attitude in the non-parliamentary Conservative Party, from what I can at least see, there is this attitude that actually Boris returning, either as PM or party leader, may not be a right idea. Certainly amongst certain factions, that is very clear. Like I say, even if Boris Johnson did return, there is a large number of MPs who do not want to work with him. That was made very, very clear in that vote of no confidence. And of course, as we saw during his end, he tried to build a cabinet, but he put people in positions only for them to resign hours later. So it continues with the party, particularly its leaders, have continually followed in the footsteps of Blair since Cameron, basically moving the party more towards a centrist right position. There are more MPs who would be better suited to a liberal party, not the Lib Dems, and it seems that it is they who control the strings and who have the power. This is evident in their defenestration of Liz Truss, who, for her faults of trying to do too much too quickly, I would argue it was actually what she was trying to do was the reason they got rid of her. But hey, we won't split hairs over that. Received no support from them for what should have been viewed as standard traditional Conservative policies. So already, when we've talked about the fact that there is going to be a civil war in the Conservative Party, you can see this at play here, because Johnson is in effect creating his own faction. And we are going to see that put pressure on, certainly depending how May elections goes for the Conservatives. He is going to try everything he can after the May elections to put pressure on and certainly try to get back into power, potentially even to replace Sunak. But so we'll finish this off. So Sunak is just the latest for them, who I have seen no underlying principles, especially as he has reneged on every promise he has made so far. The May elections will be telling. You've got Sunak, no underlining principles. Boris had no underlining principles. Anyone could have told you that, but hey, like I say, this is a Conservative voter. But as you can see already, we are seeing this from MPs, the willingness to go to war, to start a Conservative civil war for the future direction of the party. This indicates to me, not only is there now willingness to do that in the sort of the parliamentary side of the party, there is now a serious willingness to do this in the non-parliamentary side of the party. And I've been telling you for a while, these trenches for the civil war are being dug. And they are just waiting for the whistle to go over the top. And they are ready. And they are waiting for it. They're just waiting for the signal. So this, to me, this comment signals just once again, as I've been sort of telling you and trying to sort of get across to you, just how fractured the Conservative Party really is. And you've only got to look at what's going on in America with the House, with 11 straight votes, failing to elect a mainstream political Republican, just how much someone like Boris Johnson is, and the crazies that are backing him, and the factions that won't back him. It's all to play for. I will tell you this. become a leadership contest if Boris Johnson somehow ousts Rishi Sunak and it goes to a leadership contest. If I thought the last two were fun, I think this one, it's going to be explosive. It is going to be absolutely explosive because there is now a proper willingness to fight. And oh boy, it's going to be fun to watch. You know, just as the Dems have been getting out their popcorn in the House, watching the Republicans literally just self implode, we're going to be there as well with our own popcorn, just watching the Conservatives implode as well. So, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and one foundation called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.